Greetings, superior beings. Greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race. Our common enemy is death. Welcome on Try Something.Vegetarian. This is the broadcast. Spike in Ebola cases alarms health officials in DRC. Basically, it's all part of their population reduction plans to reduce the global population to 500 million and to create a world war. So it's also part of their world war strategy in theory. Of course, they will pretend they want to bring peace to the Middle East under the guise of a two-state solution. They're going to create a two-state solution world war. It's the only way to bring war to the Middle East, to split them up into two groups that can be played out against each other, each with their own allies, Russia and the US. And Kushner is also associated with the two-state solution idea, basically. So let's jump to the articles. I first have to say, immunize yourselves against their designer viruses, the Ebola, Lassa, Tegmira, Chimera. Immunize yourselves with colloidal silver. Get high on vitamin C. According to the New York Times, vitamin C is sufficient to ward off the Ebola virus. And I think they're right. These doctors and professors know that people that take enough vitamin C cannot get Ebola. Or perhaps they're lying to help reduce the global population. And airborne or Ebola resistant, that was Professor Pianka's idea. Ebola, Lassa, Tegmira, Chimera. Ebola itself is an antibody-dependent virus. So that means that people with a strong immune system will die from it, and the meek shall inherit the earth, etc. So it's done by design. It's a time-traveling AI, voice of God weapon. Adonai, in theory. So I advise everybody to check my blog, the Ebola Pandemic Prevention and Survival blog. That is ulrichbchoffman with .wixsite.com/Ebola, Ebola with the letter G attached to it, based on Gulag. And to immunize yourselves with colloidal silver. This is for $10 you can buy a colloidal silver generator with some pure silver, including shipping. It's less than $15 from the US. And then you only need aqua purificata destillata, the cleanest water you can get. And it cannot be tap water. And filtered tap water is also too risky. So then people can get argyria, basically they turn into a blue smurf. So use pure silver and pure water and follow the rules. Also take probiotics to replace the good bacteria in your gut. Your gut needs these bacteria to digest food. So it's part of a bigger population reduction plan, and if these people that advocate this population reduction are not arrested, of course they're going to do it. It's their stated goal, population reduction to 500 million, clear from their book quotes and $1 million Georgia Guidestones. Apparently they've hijacked our governments, Jesuits and Masons, and Jesuits are military order posing as a religious order, and they're famous for the pedophilia. Lately I've also been reading about pedovores and adrenochrome, and of course their Inquisition, torturing 50 million innocent people to death. And according to sources online, the Jesuits were founded by crypto Jew Loyola. And there are also sources that deny it, I think. And the Jesuits supposedly control all intelligence agencies from behind the scenes, and all intelligence agencies are Masonic, thus Luciferian, and controlled by these Jesuits. Let's read the Guardian.com article. Spike in Ebola cases alarms health officials. In DRC, I've already predicted this. And Rothschild and others are keeping these borders open. And also, Ebola responders were killed as violence flares. The story that I've read is that healthcare workers inject people with Ebola with killer vaccines to help with their population reduction. And it's clear that the vaccines cannot be effective because the mutated version of the Ebola virus is not the same as the Ebola in the vial, in the killer vaccines, that also contain many other ingredients that make clear that they are designed to reduce the global population, not to save anybody or cure anyone or immunize people. And the fact that colloidal silver is proven effective by the Strategic Threat Reduction Agency of the Department of Defense, you can find these studies, these scientific documents, on that blog that I just showed you. Ebola is proven effective in killing the Ebola virus and many other deadly organisms to cure many diseases. So they want to hide this because they can't make money from it. People can make this at home. They're also illegally blocking other working cures, the Rockefeller drug laws. Cannabis, heroin, and cocaine should be legalized. And they do that because people can grow it at home and it's natural. They want to reduce the global population with chemicals, cancer-causing prescription drugs. And chemicals have a synergistic effect with cancer-causing electromagnetic radiation, according to Dr. Cyril Smith. So that's one reason to replace all these natural drugs with chemicals, cancer-causing prescription drugs to reduce the global population. And the technique, of course, is also they can't make money from healing medicine plants people can grow at home. So they've banned all those to make a fortune, to fill the pockets of the medical cartel. Alright, so let's start reading and study these 10 population reduction methods. I made a top 10 of population reduction methods and countermeasures you can take. And that's on the Future channel, I think. Don't know if it's also on Try Something.Vegetarian on YouTube.
Spike in Ebola cases alarms health officials in DRC. Many cases blamed on a single individual who appears to have caught virus.
So they don't plan to reduce the global population, this is more important. They don't plan to do their population reduction with Ebola, but with the killer vaccines. I've also covered the CONOP 8888 of the Pentagon. That number is chosen deliberately by these people involved in the population reduction. And of course there are 6 famous Jews that are involved in this population reduction. I can find the list. That I've also posted in the chat. But also non-Jews like Ted Turner. And perhaps not all of them are self-proclaimed Zionists. Have book quotes that prove beyond any reasonable doubt they want to reduce the global population. There's also video material of Professor Pianka, for example. I'm still looking. Of course I know it by heart by now. But okay. 6 prominent Jews that advocated population reduction, some to 500 million. 1 Rothschild, 2 Rockefeller, 3 George Soros, 4 Kissinger, 5 Professor Bianca, Ebola resistant, and 6 Bill Gates with acute flaccid paralysis. So these people must be prosecuted. I wrote prosecute. It's illegal to advocate population reduction. It's in violation of the Genocide Convention. And there are already 60 to 70,000 troops, US troops, in the Middle East. So the troops is hidden in plain sight. So stop the illegal wars, bring the troops back home alive, and have a good one. Be safe, be prepared with the radiological water filter and storable food, and also a safe place. The Netherlands is not safe. The dikes are nuclear targets, clear from the nuclear target map. So I will also have to move to Israel. They plan to rule the world from Jerusalem, Zion basically. Or to some other safe country, preferably a neutral country. Because I'm against a world war and population reduction. I expose as much as possible who is really doing this, the Jesuits and Masons, and I'm not going to resort to any illegal statements or things in violation of the YouTube policy, and I hope you all don't either. There are infinite ways to create universal peace. I saw another interesting video on Facebook, 100% proof we are in end times, World War III and Dajjal. So Dajjal is the word used for a fake Mashiach. And what was the other word? Messiah or whatever is used for the supposed real Messiah. And if there is no real God, there can never be a real Messiah. It's all AI, scalar technology, time travel technology. Some call it Project Looking Glass, but that may be fake as well. They've put another name on the real thing, or elements of the real thing in it, but some lies to maintain a maximum advantage over humanity. So they also control the human mind, and people can be in on it unknowingly because of synthetic telepathy. It's possible everybody was hypnotized overnight to do exactly what they're doing at the time the program to do it. And if that was done successfully, they wouldn't remember that. But okay, let's restart reading the article. So if I think I have some more important point, then I will halt the article and inform you all.
Spike in Ebola cases alarms health officials in DRC. Many cases blamed on a single individual who appears to have caught virus for second time. Global development is supported by About This content Peter Beaumont. For December 13, 2019 15.01 last modified on for December 13, 2019 20.25 GMT shares 26 healthcare workers are decontaminated after entering the house of an Ebola victim in the DRC. Healthcare workers are decontaminated after entering the house of an Ebola victim in the eastern Congolese town of Beni. Photograph, Sahar Ben Simra. Reuters. Health officials are investigating an alarming spike in Ebola cases in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, with many blamed on a single individual who appears to have contracted the disease for a second time this year. Amid the struggle to bring the 16-month outbreak under control, the World Health Organization noted an almost 300% increase in cases in the last 3 weeks, with 17 of 27 linked to a single chain of transmission. According to officials, it appears to be the second time the person has been documented as suffering from Ebola in 6 months. An investigation is being held to understand the circumstances around the case. 10 cases were notified on Wednesday in Mabalako, North Kivu Province, where the individual is believed to be from, after another 6 on Tuesday, according to officials who noted that 3 out of the 6 were practitioners of traditional medicine. Ebola responders face deadly attacks. We must step up security in DRC, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. Read more. The spike, and the worrying circumstances behind it, appears to buck a trend towards a declining number of cases, although security issues in the key zones of Beni, Buyakato and Mangina had recently paralyzed the response after violent attacks on health workers. Among the possibilities being examined are reinfection with the disease, which would ring the most serious alarm bells as no case of reinfection has ever been recorded before, or a relapse. Q&A. What is Ebola? Show. While rare cases of relapse have been documented, in which a person who has recovered from Ebola gets its symptoms again, reinfection would mean a person who has recovered has been infected anew with the virus by another person, a circumstance so far undocumented. Experts have long been anxious about the risk of recurrence because the virus can persist for months in areas of the body that are immunologically protected, including semen, vaginal fluids, sweat, aqueous humor, urine, breast milk and even spinal fluid after initial onset and recovery. That has led researchers to speculate about the continued risk of transmission in individuals not showing any symptoms, including through sexual activity, leading to reactivation of the illness. Reinfection, relapse and recurrence are all sources of acute concern in controlling the outbreak, as Ebola survivors are employed widely in treatment centers in DRC on the assumption they cannot usually recontract or transmit the disease. In July, another patient died from what was also presumed to be a relapse or reinfection, calling into question the assumption that Ebola survivors have lifelong immunity from the virus. According to figures from the African Union as of 8 December, the Ebola outbreak in DRC has claimed 2,209 lives since it broke. Vaccine ingredients. GSK Ebola vaccine, a recombinant type of chimpanzee cold virus, called Chimpadonovirus type 3, CHAD3, and segments of genetic material derived from 2 Ebola virus species, Zaire Ebola and Sudan Ebola, so there are no segments of the mutated Ebola Bundibugyo virus in this, possibly slow kill, vaccine. Other ingredients may cause brain neuron degeneration, mercury, renamed thiamricil for this purpose. Did they even test this on monkeys first? ZMapp is composed of 3 monoclonal antibodies, MABs, that have been humanized by genetic engineering 9, and combine the best components of MB003, MAP, and SMAB, devirus/FAC, each of which were combinations of MABs. TKM Ebola is a combination of small interfering RNAs targeting 3 of the 7 proteins in Ebola virus, Zaire Ebola L polymerase, Zaire Ebola membrane-associated protein, VP24, and Zaire Ebola polymerase complex protein, VP35, formulated with Tecmira's lipid nanoparticle technology. A list of all the ingredients in these possibly slow-kill vaccines that may have an incubation period of the designer's choosing was not found online by me yet. Note that these pharmaceutical companies have been granted legal immunity and are not responsible if everyone who took the vaccine dies after half year or a year. It is illegal to grant these companies legal immunity because colloidal silver is proven to be effective in killing the Ebola virus and the "medicine" must be safe and the maker should be responsible if it turns out to be worse than the disease or a binary weapon. On top of all this, the virus has mutated terribly, so it is very doubtful if these vaccines stay effective, if they are effective at all. None of the vaccines have the patented Ebola Bundibugyo Ebola strain in them, though they have other Ebola strain segments indicating that it matters what type of Ebola it is exactly and how it has mutated. All the vaccines contain genetically modified ingredients, so avoid these as much as possible. Primum non nocere, first do no harm. ulrichkaufmann.wixsite.com/ebolag Colloidal silver generator, comes with 0.999 fine silver electrode. Price US $9.97. Shipping $5.00.
We find the next article on nature.com. This was the 26th of November 2019.
Ebola responders killed as violence flares. The World Health Organization is evacuating staff members from 3 communities in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
It's interesting that they used exactly the same picture on the Guardian.com article. We see this picture. Healthcare workers spraying on a person wearing a yellow outfit. And the same picture is found on here on nature.com. I just noticed it now. It's I'm baffled. And perhaps it's the other way around. They were spraying stuff on the healthcare worker to disinfect.
Ebola responders in Beni, a city in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, disinfect each other before entering the home of a woman thought to be infected with the virus. Credit, Zahra Ben Simra, Reuters. Armed groups have killed 4 Ebola responders in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, and injured 5 others, in a series of attacks that began late on 27 November, according to the World Health Organization, WHO. The dead include a vaccination worker, 2 drivers and police officer, the agency said. Dozens of aid workers are being evacuated from the areas under siege, and the Ebola response there has mostly halted. The attacks, in Biakato and Mangina, came after violence in nearby Beni prompted the WHO and aid groups to begin evacuating workers from that city earlier this week. We are heartbroken that people have died in the line of duty as they work to save others from Ebola, WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus tweeted on 28 November. Exclusive, behind the front lines of the Ebola wars when late-night attack by the grassroots militia known as the Mai targeted the residence of Ebola responders in Biakato. The vaccination worker was one of several people killed there, according to the Center of Study for the Promotion of Peace, Democracy and Human Rights, a DRC activist group. The same night, 27 November, armed groups charged an Ebola response coordination center in Mangina, the WHO says. Police protecting the center fought back, and 1 person was killed in the crossfire. Dangerous situation. It is not clear whether the attacks in Mangina and Biakato are related to each other or to the continuing violence in Beni. An armed group called the ADF, Allied Democratic Forces, has terrorized residents there with machetes and knives over the past 3 weeks. Roughly 100 people have been killed and many more displaced, according to the Congo Research Group at New York University. The ADF is one of dozens of armed groups that operate in the DRC. The WHO said earlier this week that the violence in Beni would probably cause the number of new Ebola cases to rise. The situation is poised to worsen with the evacuation of Ebola responders from Biakato and Mangina. Such workers normally circulate in communities to trace the contacts of people with Ebola, who they vaccinate and monitor for signs of infection. Ebola has infected more than 3,300 people in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, since August 2018 and killed nearly 2,200, according to the DRC government. Meet the Ebola workers battling a virus in a war zone. The latest surge in violence has angered residents of Beni and nearby communities, who are upset that United Nations peacekeeping troops and DRC soldiers stationed in the city have not stopped the ADF attacks. On 25 November, street demonstrations against the UN spilled into one of the organization's compounds near Beni, where protesters set a vehicle on fire. Soon afterwards, UN troops were evacuated from the city by helicopter. Losing ground. The pause in the fight against Ebola is particularly discouraging to Marie-Roselyne Darnica-Blazer, an epidemiologist coordinating the WHO's response to the DRC outbreak. She had begun to let herself envision the end of the outbreak, because the number of new infections reported each week has dwindled steadily since October. Before the latest violence erupted, Ebola responders had been able to bring many sick people to treatment centers within 24 hours of the first symptoms of infection. There, those who are ill receive drugs that can cure up to 90% of Ebola cases if given soon after infection, and they are prevented from transmitting the virus to others. Science under fire. Ebola researchers fight to test drugs and vaccines in a war zone. Now Blazer fears that more than a year of hard work by Ebola responders could be undone. 2 people have been diagnosed with the virus in Beni and nearby Oicha amid the unrest, and Ebola responders haven't been able to track chains of transmission. We were so close, Blazer said on 25 November as she readied a WHO facility in Mangina for an influx of Ebola responders from Beni, which is 40 minutes away. Some Ebola responders are fearful that they, too, could be injured or killed by armed groups. But Blazer said they will keep pushing to end the outbreak nonetheless. Most of us are energized, she said. We want to stay in the field and finish the job. Days later, Ebola responders in Mangina came under attack. In a text message to Nature on 28 November, Blazer said that she had begun to organize the evacuation of Ebola workers there. Interpol chief Meng Hongwei vanishes on trip to China. France has opened an investigation into the disappearance of Meng Hongwei, the Chinese head of the international police agency Interpol. His family have not heard from him since he left Interpol HQ in the French city of Lyon for a trip back to China on 25 September, officials said. DentonDaily.com. U.S. pulls diplomats from Iraqi city after threats from Iran. Washington, New York. The United States announced on Friday it will effectively close its consulate in the Iraqi city of Basra and relocate diplomatic personnel assigned there following increasing threats from Iran and Iran-backed militia, including rocket fire. apps.who.in/globalis/ 500, internal server error. There is a problem with the resource you're looking for, and it cannot be displayed. healthmap.org/n
So here we see the health map. Campylobacter tuberculosis in the Netherlands. Is that one case? STEC and Campylobacter infections rise in the Netherlands, according to healthmap.org. Let's see if we can find more information about what's happening in Africa. Democratic Republic of Congo. Poliomyelitis update. Measles. Ebola in DRC, 27 new cases in almost a week. Twelve hemorrhagic alerts. How to zoom out. Now it's on 13. Congo. Lomami National Park. The other one is near Tsongo. "141 dead in massacres since the end of October." Okia. So people can check that healthmap.org map for themselves to see globally what's happening. The Zika mosquitoes. So these encephalitis cases started appearing after they released their Zika mosquitoes. I've already reported it, and millions of others have as well, of course. New report on malaria, Sierra Leone. Lassa fever, West Africa, Liberia. Yellow fever, Mali, etc. So when people take a holiday, they can also first check healthmap.org to see what type of diseases are flaring up in their country of travel. Okay, Um, So to prevent a global pandemic, 1. Immunize everyone with the real cure, colloidal silver. 2. Close the borders of infected countries completely. I think a majority of the people on planet Earth would agree with closing the borders of infected countries completely to rule out a global Ebola pandemic. To survive a global mutating Ebola virus pandemic, 1. Take colloidal silver. 2. Get storable food, rice and peanut butter. And of course get a license so you can have a weapon and defend yourself and your family. During a world war there can also be plundering, etc. And people have a right to defend themselves, the right to bear arms. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution protects the individual right to keep and bear arms. It was ratified on December 15, 1791 as part of the Bill of Rights. So that's when you're in the US, you have that right. And we have to protect our country against enemies, foreign and domestic. So that includes people that want to do away with the US and impose a systemic, Luciferian, totalitarian global government. I can read some of the latest news articles, and then I think that about wraps it up for this broadcast.
Spike in Ebola cases alarms health officials in DRC. The Guardian. 21 hours ago, health officials are investigating an alarming spike in Ebola cases in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, with many blamed on a single airbridge vaccination operation begins for Ebola hit. UN News. 19 hours ago, weekly Ebola cases spike, involve 3 transmission chains. SIDRAP. 13 hours ago, Ebola spreads in Congo after militants attack treatment camp. Reuters. 22 hours ago, death toll from Dr. Congo's Ebola outbreak rises to 2,209, OCGTN.com. 22 hours ago. Important info to prevent and survive a global Ebola pandemic. 1. Colloidal silver kills the new Ebola virus effectively as shown in the scientific study of the DoD, Department of Defense. 2. The Jesuit-controlled CDC, the designers of the new patented Bundibugyo Ebola virus strain designed to create a global pandemic, and WHO are tools used by the Rockefellers, Nazi eugenics democide, and Jesuits to reduce the world's global population to 500 million with a genetically modified slow-kill brain-eating vaccine. Because the DoD report has shown colloidal silver effectively kills Ebola and other hemorrhagic fever viruses, and this real and only effective Ebola cure has not been shipped to Africa, which now has 1,350 Ebola deaths to mourn, and the CDC and WHO claim a cure will be available in 2015. We know their technique to spread the virus is preventing the African people from getting the real cure, colloidal silver, and using an experimental vaccine, ZMapp, which has an ingredient, MB003, that was only effective in 43% of the monkeys injected with Ebola, and another slow-kill brain-eating vaccine, TKM Ebola, which also contains genetically modified ingredients. Because colloidal silver is scientifically proven to be effective against Ebola, we know the genetically modified vaccines are used to reduce the world's global population, and we must spread colloidal silver to prevent this new Ebola strain from infecting us all, to prevent a global pandemic, to prevent mandatory slow-kill brain-eating vaccination. 3. Besides the slow-kill brain-eating vaccines, the perpetrators involved in the illegal population reduction, democide, have made illegal laws and plan to home quarantine people to starve them to death and injection with the deadly slow-kill vaccine at gunpoint. Mandatory vaccinations, to reduce the world's global population to 500 million. Georgia Guidestones, a legal book, quotes on universalpeace.jimdo.com that prove there are people that want to do a population reduction and Ebola would be the best way according to Professor Bianca with a P from Protein. 4. Closing all borders completely for a while is another way to prevent a global pandemic. 5. This new Ebola strain is patented and airborne. The people that have spread this virus via vaccines, see list of pandemics caused by vaccinations on universalpeace.edublogs.org, should be exposed and arrested. Preventing a global pandemic beats curing. Do not follow illegal genocidal orders. Recovery begins with non-compliance. Unite, unite, unite to prevent the Bundibugyo Ebola genocide. Save this PDF backup to CD. Reasons to keep vaccination voluntary and prevent mandatory slow-kill vaccination. 1. The 3 vaccines that are available contain up to 3 types of segments of Ebola but no Ebola Bundibugyo segments, which may be the patented virus they are using to reduce the world's global population in violation of the Genocide Convention. 2. The Ebola virus has mutated terribly, so it is unlikely the vaccine will stay effective if it would be effective at all. 3. It is possible that vaccine contains genetically altered strains with an incubation period that is long enough to kill 7 billion people worldwide with mandatory slow-kill Ebola vaccines. 4. The pharmaceutical companies have been granted legal immunity so people cannot press charges if they die from the vaccine within a year. 5. It is clear there are several people that have called for a population reduction with airborne Ebola, for example, that have made clear they want to reduce the world's global population to 500 million, which is public and open incitement to commit genocide, a clear violation of the Genocide Convention. We therefore urge readers to press charges against these individuals as soon as possible to prevent a global Ebola pandemic democide. 6. The vaccine may contain other slow-kill ingredients such as mercury, renamed thimerosal, which causes brain neuron degeneration. 7. If the vaccine would be effective, then vaccinated people cannot be contaminated by people that have not been vaccinated, so there is no valid argument to make vaccination mandatory. There are only arguments to keep vaccination voluntary. Chemically sensitive people like me may never be injected with vaccines that have genetically altered or chemical ingredients in them because it would be murder. 8. The right to physical integrity is the most important right people have, and every law that undermines people's right to physical integrity is an illegal law and obviously made to reduce the world's global population in violation of the Genocide Convention. Mandatory vaccination is a direct violation of people's right to physical integrity. 9. The list of pandemics caused by vaccinations makes clear vaccines are not safe, and life instead of deactivated viruses ended up in vaccines several times, which killed the people that received the vaccine. universalpeace.edublogs.org. The Department of Defense's scientific study shows colloidal silver kills the Ebola virus effectively, including mutations, because of its mechanism of action. 11. 10 leading experts have said no Ebola drugs nor vaccines are needed to stop the Ebola outbreak. Source: New York Times. All in all, there is no valid reason to inject people with dangerous, untested vaccines because colloidal silver is effective and natural.
So if you're going to press charges, I advise it to do that together, to record against the tetracycline that may illegally refuse your right to press charges, and then upload it to YouTube, etc. And say that somebody else recorded it, that you don't have that video, when the police officer shows up at your door the next day to tell you to remove it, which I did. Because these cancer tetracycle crops, police officers, etc., are controlled with the remote torture technology that can be used to remotely torture and kill people, send illegal voice-to-skull messages. Synthetic telepathy has been around since 1974. The Malig patent, apparatus to remotely monitor and alter brainwaves. And because other people don't talk about it, I think I should mention it in all my broadcasts. The people above all. But of course I don't, it depends on the subject. When I focus on a certain subject, I might forget about other more important things. I'm doing my best to get everything, the most important stuff, in all my broadcasts. But try Something.Vegetarian for more information. And I'm real, I'm not controlled the position, that's why I don't have views. Perhaps I'm shadow banned, etc. So they have all kinds of techniques to misdirect the people and reduce the global population. And these police officers are lower in the chain of command, so they have to follow orders from these democidal intelligence agencies that have not arrested these people, that advocate a population reduction, obviously, and they have not prevented a lot of these attacks we've been seeing recently.
Close the borders of infected countries. I think a majority of the people on planet Earth would agree with closing the borders of infected countries completely to rule out a global pandemic. The Rothschilds have called for an end to the travel ban to create a global Ebola pandemic to reduce the world's global population to 500 million using home quarantines and slow-kill vaccines. Everything has been pre-arranged to kill 7 billion people with home quarantines, slow-kill vaccines and a vastly mutating form of Ebola Bundibugyo by the World Health Organization. Have people in Africa been vaccinated before they died of Ebola? There is a doctor and a nurse that both claimed people were injected with Ebola, obviously with the goal to create a global pandemic. A list must be made with names of Ebola victims that died after vaccination and what vaccine they received. Since the WHO and CDC may be involved in creating this pandemic, I would not trust their data and make a list yourself.
George Soros and Margaret Chan are committee of 300 subversive of the club of members. The goals of the committee of 300 we find two gods by means of wars in the advanced countries by means of starvation and disease in the third world countries. The death of 3 billion people by the year 2050 people. They call you Steve George Soros and Margaret Chan.
How dare you!
Words mispronounced by the Julie speech engine. Depopulation is pronounced as depopulatia. Kinemalab is pronounced as Kemalab. The abbreviation doctor is pronounced as drive. The abbreviation UN is sometimes pronounced as union. The thimerosal is pronounced as thimerosal, which is another vaccine ingredient without the brain neuron degeneration causing agent mercury. $160,000 hazmat suits for the people that are gonna exterminate you all. The Ebola strain in the vaccine cannot be the mutated strain. It is the unmutated strain and may contain an incubation period to slow kill 7 billion people. The virus may have been created to fit in with their illegal slow kill Ebola vaccine and home quarantine democide. The mutated Ebola strains cannot be the same as the Ebola strains put in the vaccine to commit democide. Of course they may pretend it is possible, we know it is impossible because it is still rapidly mutating. They have to be insane to think we would take the slow kill vaccine with all these people advocating genocide with their book quotes on universalpeace.jimdo.com. U.S. military will lead $750 million fight against Ebola in West. Washington Post, 8 minutes ago. I think most of the military will die if they do not take colloidal silver and do not use hazmat suits with respirators. Jamming for Jamaica or fighting for Ebola? So the main lie to contaminate the military and depopulate the earth to 500 million they are using at the moment is that the Ebola virus is not airborne. The other lie is that the modified strains in the slow kill Ebola vaccines are the same as the vastly mutating ones. Respirators are not gas masks nor face masks Michael Jackson used to wear. Ebola misdiagnosed: CDC changed the list of Ebola symptoms. The new symptoms of Ebola are so common. There are so many diseases that have the exact symptoms Ebola has that it is almost impossible to diagnose American Ebola patients as such. Doctors just do not expect any Americans to have Ebola, and it is possible that none of them do at the moment. Ebola is patented, infinite uses for it, so it's great. It is not helping us. We are the only ones that are helping us, ourselves. Illuminati, loose of Illuminati. It, the beast and or quantum computers that control people's brain waves, thoughts and emotions. TKM Ebola has the nano-death chip. They will attempt to make it mandatory worldwide to depopulate to 500 million. TKM Ebola is what many people call the mark of the beast. Lipid nanotechnology.
So it's lipid nanotechnology, of course.
Protect your neurons, people. Protect your brain. T4. Beware genetically engineered T4 bacteriophage nanobots.
Some famous committee of 300 members. Somehow this text is not selectable because I used a different mouse pointer. This committee of 300 members should be arrested immediately for conspiracy to commit genocide. The means by which they have chosen to commit genocide include a slow kill vaccine, TKM Ebola, and home quarantines. The Rothschilds have called for an end to the travel ban, opening the borders of Ebola-infected countries to create a global Ebola pandemic for this horrendous purpose. They're hurting my knee, so I have to stand up for a while, protecting my knees with the scalar weapons that they've used to torture my teeth out of my mouth and my mother to death. So some of these people are bloody serious about population reduction, and they're willing to spend millions, even billions on it. And they'd rather make money from it. And that's another technique they use. They've an incredible amount of money.
If you do not carry a blue transponder, the Talon robots and drones will shoot at you when you leave your home quarantines. CBFSA, Blue Force Situational Awareness. As soon as this is global and the pandemic level 6 is declared, the inoculation with the deadly vaccines.
So it's now called Blue Force Tracking, BFT. Used to be called BFSA. Designating US citizens as enemy combatants that will be shot at by the killer drones, the Talon robot army, they call Project Swords, beat the Project Swords into plowshares, etc. And by the military carrying these transponders. Everybody without a transponder will be killed during that home quarantine period. So people need enough storable food, otherwise they cannot survive. That's Kissinger's plan to do population control, to reduce the global population by controlling the food supply.
will be mandatory. The vaccines contain 1. A zombie virus, rabies-based, that will turn people into extremely aggressive people mislabeled zombies by the DoD that knows colloidal silver is the only mutating Ebola chimera cure. 2. Self-replicating nanobots, lipid nanotechnology that is designed to lobotomize people and of which the long-term effects have never been tested. The genocidal companies that produce this have illegally been granted legal immunity for this nefarious purpose. The CDC's strains. 1. FEMA trains to transport people to the FEMA camps and cadaver boxes bought by the CDC. 2. Patented Ebola strains, Ebola bundibugyo and others that have been released that may not be patented, a rabies Ebola chimera and an airborne Ebola Lassa Tecmara chimera also known as hybrid virus. They will pretend it has mutated while in reality they have designed and released these viruses. It is stoppable, we already know that, so they pretend it's unstoppable to kill you all and themselves if they are brain controlled to the max. Colloid all. Spread the information as rapidly as possible to save your own life and the lives of your loved ones. Make colloidal silver flyers and spread them at the airports. You could also stick a red etc. because 7 billion lives are at stake. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you, the Ebola rabies chimera.
Sticker. People could put stickers everywhere to take colloidal silver. Ebola is coming, etc. And we don't want to be vaccinated to death. So then it's best if we all are immunized. Then it cannot spread to our country. That's the only thing we can do when we keep these borders open. And end the travel bans.
The names of the police officers that illegally refused me my right to press charges against the people that advocate using airborne Ebola to reduce the world's global population to 500 million are Officer Sicking and Officer Storm in Utrecht and police officers in Maastricht. I have attempted to press charges of incitement to commit genocide twice. Hell hi, we were all puppets brain controlled with synthetic telepathy, everyone without a Tesla plasma shield, so always compare to the opposite next idea. The people controlling us, the NSA, Satanists, Luciferians, Freemasons, Jesuit controlled, have planned to kill 93% of us. They have the death ray and control the Supreme Court, so most of us are going to die. Ebola is still spreading fast and the end of their planned Ebola Lassa Tecmara chimera pandemic is not in sight.
This is highly theoretical, of course. There are infinite ways to prevent a third Jesuit World War, a two-state solution, Iran World War. And Ebola is just to cover up the developments and other things in the mainstream media that will be happening simultaneously as part of their population reduction agenda. But it will culminate and 7 billion people are going to die if these people are not arrested or stopped somehow from fulfilling their population reduction agenda.
Go to a safe country, get storable food, peanut butter, rice, and colloidal silver. Take vitamin C, best source kiwi. Get an air cleaner with an ionizer. Get or make your own cloudbuster. Use a Moebius coil to create your own scalar waves. Get a water filter and alkalize your water. Get a gas mask. Get a radiological water filter. Maybe store air and water info. How to do it is online. Lowland. Kid these men now.
Loyola Land.
The Aesculapius is basically a Moebius coil.
Okay, so that's the Ebola pandemics prevention and survival blog. And it will all be erased by the EMP, so put it on a CD-ROM, DVD if you want to keep the information till after the World War. And just prepare for World War, though it might not and hopefully doesn't happen. World War III is our enemy. Our common enemy is death. We have to control all factors that control aging in time, otherwise we're gone forever, so don't buy any religious BS. Alright, that's it for now. I'm gonna have some breakfast. Brunch, basically. Thank you all for watching. Spread this very vital, important video for a better timeline, a better future for yourself and your fellow humans. And most of us are not involved in the population reduction. Most people around you are not murderers. The good civilized people, they deserve our love and respect, and not to be injected with killer vaccines and killed with depleted uranium, acute flaccid paralysis and Ebola, etc. So the governments of the world are also urged to take steps to do the right thing and also inform other people in the government about this. Together you can make fists against these people, you can arrest them. This is the hand signal for solidarity, so that's not a good idea. I mean, prosecute them and bring them to justice for the murders and democide they have already committed. Before it's too late, of course, that they can remotely torture and kill people. That changes things to a great extent, so trust no one, nothing is what it seems. Recovery nowadays often begins with non-compliance, but not always. And sometimes people need chemical, these cancer-causing prescription drugs. When natural cures, when they've tried every other road and natural cures don't work. And first they have to diagnose it properly. So to cure a disease, we have to treat the cause and not just fight the symptoms with chemical cancer-causing prescription drugs. And many doctors do that because it's part of their population reduction. They get paid by these tax-exempt corporations to push chemical cancer-causing killer vaccines and other killer drugs to reduce the global population. Also drugs that turn people into compulsive gamblers, into serial killers, etc. Zoloft and pergolide, now replaced by I have to think. That changes people into compulsive gamblers, also according to the leaflet. Pramipexole is now the replacement of pergolide, and they both do that according to the leaflet, but it's still better than some other chemical cancer-causing prescription drug that my family member would die of. So also a good idea to expand your consciousness. Cannabis can also be eaten. I have a doctor's prescription for the use of cannabis. So check local laws. It should be legalized worldwide, of course. So do things in compliance with the law, the real law. Not the possibly illegal secret laws that they have, etc. Don't follow illegal orders, because then you could end up in jail instead of the dictator or whoever is doing that. So we have to stall, prevent sabotage, and end World War III basically. And the same thing goes for their population reduction plans. And helping them is only helping to exterminate yourselves. It's possible to get rid of all the Freemasons. Basically there are 7 Noahide laws. And there are codified laws, and you have the Constitution, and these things are in violation of all these laws. So how that's possible? I think it's only possible with their ability to remotely torture and kill people, which is also used to silence people about synthetic telepathy, remote torture technology. And never say you hear voices, because then they electroshock you to death. So telling the truth is considered a crime nowadays. It's not considered a revolutionary act. They just put you in prison for it. So we'll see what happens to these people that advocate a population reduction. And people can immunize themselves with colloidal silver. And you could argue everyone that doesn't is an accomplice to murder, but that would go very far. Thank you all for watching. Tune in next time on Try Something.Vegetarian. Do healing stuff for universal peace. And a kiss for all single ladies who would like that. Masturbation, sex is healing. So that's one thing we must do besides being prepared and have a good time. Sometimes do healing things. It can be yoga. People must also get some movement and get hydrated. many people in the US are also dehydrated. So no cancer-causing killer alcohol, but smoothies, coconut juice, pineapple juice, mineral water that contains these minerals that we need, that our body needs, not just filtered tap water, which can also be used for cooking, so we use a lot of that stuff. It was a little mosquito, I think it wasn't, it's a little tiny fruit fly. I don't think you saw it on the video. Anyway, they can control tiny things as well, so it is through the wall radar, they see us in 3D and they're monitoring our mind. It's much more advanced than people think, and some people want to pretend that they need a chip and that it's microwave harassment, but in reality it's Tesla scalar technology, time travel technology, also associated with John Trump, Trump's uncle. So I've covered this on my channel, Try Something.Vegetarian, and people can always Skype Prologic999 to do a broadcast, or to ask me anything, or to criticize or compliment me. And thank you all for your likes and subscribes, and share this stuff, share this video on your timeline, because it's vital, it's for the survival of humanity. I am not controlled opposition, not a shill, I'm not like the others, I'm a real targeted individual, and I'm a truth teller and I'm a conspiracy factist. Urg BC Hoffman. Thank you all for watching, tune in next time, and remember to try something vegetarian or vegan for universal peace.